Welcome to Daba Markets Talk, the podcast that uncovers the trends and events shaping African economies, finance, and markets, with a special focus on Francophone West Africa. We begin with some good news. The BRVM has closed another week in positive territory. And despite quieter trading activity, every major market index finished higher. That matters because the market's performance was not driven by just one stock. The BRVM composite rose 0.59% to close at 485.48 points. The BRVM 30 gained 0.50% to reach 231.22 points. The BRVM Prestige advanced 0.49%, while the BRVM Principal delivered the strongest performance, rising 0.72%. For investors, the message is fairly simple. The underlying trend remains constructive, but the market is not showing signs of euphoria. Prices are moving higher gradually, which makes individual stock selection increasingly important. Trading volume fell 42.12% to just over 6.1 million shares. The total value of transactions declined 9.15% to approximately 8.04 billion CFA francs. But there is important context here. The trading week was shorter because of Côte d'Ivoire's Independence Day holiday, while activity in Ecobank Transnational Incorporated also declined. Despite lower trading activity, the equity market's total capitalization still increased 0.58% to more than 18.7 trillion CFA francs. Sonadal Senegal remained the most actively traded stock, generating close to 2.93 billion CFA francs in transactions. Its continued position near the top of the liquidity rankings highlights the strong investor interest and market depth surrounding the stock. Now, let's look at the week's top stocks. Sicor Côte d'Ivoire took first place after rising 10.70% to 7,085 CFA francs. There is an important detail investors should understand here. Sicor has relatively low market liquidity. That means a small number of buy or sell orders can sometimes create unusually large movements in its share price. A strong percentage gain does not necessarily mean there was equally strong trading activity behind it. SITAB and Côte d'Ivoire recorded the second-best performance, rising 7.67% to 24,980 CFA franc. BOA Côte d'Ivoire completed the top three with a gain of 7.26%, closing at 11,600 CFA francs. But beneath the headline index gains, the market was remarkably balanced. 22 stocks rose, 22 declined, and 3 finished unchanged. In other words, a rising BRVM does not mean every stock is rising. This is precisely why investors need to look beyond the index and understand what is happening at the company level. On the downside, NEI-SITA fell 7.24% following several weeks of strong gains. The decline appears to reflect some profit-taking by investors. Africa Global Logistics. Côte d'Ivoire declined 5.95% after weaker 2025 annual results triggered a negative market reaction. Total Côte d'Ivoire fell 5.71%. This is another useful reminder. After a stock has risen sharply, investors who bought earlier may decide to lock in their profits. When enough investors do that at the same time, the price can quickly reverse direction. Now to the bond market. Bond market capitalization declined 0.71% to approximately 12.93 trillion CFA francs. A total of 68,287 bonds changed hands during the week, representing approximately 783.8 million CFA francs in transactions. Most of that activity was concentrated in Senegal's 3-year sovereign bond carrying a 6.75% coupon. 48,900 bonds were traded for a total value of 489 million CFA francs. That single security represented more than 71% of all bonds traded during the week and more than 62% of the total value of bond transactions. Why does that matter? Because concentration tells investors where liquidity currently sits in the bond market. A bond may offer an attractive yield, but if very few investors trade it, selling that investment quickly can be more difficult. So, when evaluating bonds, investors should look beyond the coupon. Consider the yield to maturity, credit risk, remaining maturity, and liquidity as well. The BRVM dividend season also remains very active. Our latest dividend tracker shows 35 out of 47 listed companies with proposed, confirmed, or already paid dividends for 2026, with an indicative average yield of 4.56%. Companies with confirmed dividends include Servair, Nestlé Côte d'Ivoire, Société Générale Côte d'Ivoire, CFAO Motors, and SITAB. Several companies have already completed their dividend payments, including SOGB, NSIA Bank, SIB, Solibra, CIE, Orange Côte d'Ivoire, and Sonatel. For income-focused investors, remember that the dividend yield alone does not tell the whole story. You also need to monitor the ex-dividend date, payment date, company earnings, and whether the business can sustainably maintain its dividend. To access the complete BRVM dividend calendar, download the Daba app. Away from the BRVM, it was also a major week for African investment and economic news. In Nigeria, Dangote Petroleum Refinery formally filed its initial public offering application. The planned transaction could seek approximately $5 billion and potentially become one of Africa's largest stock market listings, subject to regulatory approval. For investors, a transaction of this size could significantly deepen Nigeria's stock market, while giving institutional and retail investors access to one of Africa's most important industrial assets. PalmPay, meanwhile, is seeking approximately $200 million from investors at a valuation above $1 billion and is considering a future Hong Kong listing. And Moove raised $250 million at a valuation of $2.1 billion as it expands its business around autonomous vehicle fleets. These are two significant examples of African-founded companies attracting global pools of capital while building businesses with ambitions far beyond their original markets. In Morocco, a consortium led by Canadivia Innova is planning a roughly $1.5 billion waste-to-energy project in Casablanca. The project will combine waste incineration, solar power, and biogas with enough planned electricity generation to potentially serve around 1 million people. For investors, this highlights the growing intersection between African infrastructure, energy demand, and environmental investment. Gabon also returned to international debt markets, raising $920 million through a 7-year Eurobond carrying a 9.375% annual coupon. Investor orders exceeded $1 billion. That shows Gabon still has access to global capital markets. But the relatively high borrowing cost also highlights the risks investors are demanding compensation for. And finally, Guinea said it intends to retain the Guinean franc rather than immediately adopt the proposed eco-regional currency. For investors, this debate goes directly to monetary policy. A common currency can make regional commerce easier, but countries also give up some control over interest rates, money supply, and exchange rate policy. So, what should investors watch next week? The Opportunities Report covering the week of August 10th to August 14th identifies interesting setups across areas including banking, financial services, and telecommunications, while also calling for greater caution around certain stocks whose valuations have become stretched. The bond market also contains several sovereign and institutional securities offering potentially attractive yields to maturity. We will not reveal the individual stocks, entry levels, or target prices here. Those opportunities are reserved for Daba Pro subscribers. With Daba Pro, you get weekly recommendations, detailed stock analysis, exclusive market data, and reduced investing fees. You do not simply follow the markets, you stay ahead of them. And if you want to strengthen your investing knowledge from the ground up, join Daba Academy. Daba Academy helps you understand the BRVM, stocks, bonds, dividends, investment analysis, and the fundamentals you need to make more informed decisions. There is also an ongoing promotion. Use the code PODCAST when registering for Daba Academy and receive a 3,000 CFA franc discount. That was your weekly market recap on Markets Talk, the podcast by Daba Finance. The BRVM remains on an upward trend. Opportunities remain available, but selection and discipline are becoming increasingly important. See you next time. Stay curious, stay invested.